Welcome back to Unit 9. We're at content check number 2, where we're going to run through some of the isms. Hopefully we're to the point where some of these have been covered in class. Maybe Goya's 3rd of May has also been covered in class. But that's alright, just in case you need a quick refresher here. Again, trying to be picky with my computer here, isn't it? Alrighty, so getting into liberalism. We've seen liberalism in the past when we've got people who want representative government, individual freedoms. Of course, this stems from the Enlightenment period, where we're going to see this getting into something. We're going to get a little bit more specific here, is that they have opposition to government intervention in social and economic affairs. So what does that mean? Very often and in class we talk a lot about how liberals of Europe and AP Euro and the ones we're talking about are not the ones of today. And this is where there's a huge difference. Liberals are usually associated with Democrats who typically favor unions and things like that, where our Republicans in today's society are hands off, no government interventions. Well, back then, again, just to prove that this is something a little bit different, you can't get these two confused. The liberals we're talking about in Europe at this time are opposed to government intervention in social and economic affairs. So that means they're all about the laissez-faire. Leave the economics alone. Adam Smith is a liberal with his Wealth of Nations. They're critical of that mercantilist system, remember, where the government or the king tries to maintain a favorable balance of trade. So, again, liberals, a little bit different and definitely almost opposites of what the liberals are today in American politics anyway, that they have opposition to government intervention in social and economic affairs. They're considered the radicals during this time period. They tend to exclude lower class from government and business, and they want universal voting rights. So, again, kind of a little bit of a different thing here. Make sure you take a minute to kind of look at the liberals and see what's going on with them. Next up, nationalism, that whole idea of cultural unity, that a heritage, a culture, someone with a common tongue or speaking language should be all in one country. When you draw the political borders of a map, that means the actual borders of a country or a state or whatever, they should match up with the cultural borders. It should all match. So, all of the German-speaking people should be in one country, and all of the English-speaking people should be in another country. So each group of people needs to coincide with each border that is starred and underlined, just to kind of help you sort all of this out. You get into a we versus they kind of mentality, and that one country may be better than another possibly, and that's just kind of a side effect. We're going to see how that kind of leads again into World War I, imperialism, Hitler, etc., and we'll need to know and have a good idea of nationalism when we start talking about fascism and Nazism. Then we get into some socialism. We've, again, hopefully at this point have covered some of this in class. But it's the cooperation of the community, and that's really what socialism is all about. So if you're trying to wonder, how did socialism eventually become communism? Because it's all about community. Commune, community, communist, all that same base word there. So French Socialists versus Marxist Socialists is going to be one of the things we want to focus in on. French Socialists believe in economic equality, and it needs to be planned out by the government. The whole point of socialism is to try to abolish private property so that the community all holds the property together. This is supposed to get rid of social classes, get rid of that big disparity between the rich versus the poor. Everything should moderately equal out. There shouldn't be just the rich and just the poor. There should be more equality-based type of economy. And then we get into our individual socialists. Henri de Saint-Simon and Fourier, and we'll be watching some videos in class that kind of show you the differences between the two, but this kind of lines out, the ideas of the socialists, Saint-Simon, Saint-Simon, Fourier, etc. Socialists oppose private property and support the working class. A lot of the working class people really liked the ideas that the socialists had and we're talking about, because the bourgeoisie, that middle class and upper middle class that had made their money and were now investing in businesses and had some money because they were factory owners or invested in industry, they wanted to get as much money out of the workers as possible. And so on the flip side of that, you got the capitalists. And this is kind of setting the stage between the socialism versus capitalism argument that we're going to be talking about for quite a while. The socialists are for the working class, the proletariat. And then, of course, the bourgeoisie, middle class, upper middle class, they're going to be the more capitalist in nature, because capitalism, hey, you make as much money as you can, you pay your earners, your workers as little as possible as you can barely get. Again, go back to Ricardo's iron laws of wages. Just as much as they need to get them to work and to keep them above that poverty line, and that's it. You're not necessarily focused on making the factories a good, safe work environment. You're not really worried about the smog or the smoke. You're not worried about the fact that you're using children to get the coals up and down from the bottoms of the coal mines to the tops, or the young girls and the women with the smaller hands reaching on those assembly lines for glass and losing fingers in the process. Because again, all of those safety procedures are going to actually require you to spend from your profit margin. So we saw a lot of this in Manchester DBQ, where the socialists and the reformers were like, hey, there's some problems here, we need to fix them. The capitalists aren't necessarily going to, if you're a true capitalist, aren't necessarily going to want to go along with that, spending that money to make a safer work environment. So we've got government-backed workshops and factories that guarantee employment, and this is how we kind of merge and ease on into a little bit of communism here. And the French socialists, and we need to be very careful here, French socialists believe that there should be an intervention on the behalf of the working class. This is really where we're going to get into a difference between it and Marxist socialism. Hang on to that thought. There'll actually be a slide that spells that out here in just a moment. So with Marxist socialism, you've got Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels. They're writing this book called the Communist Manifesto. Karl Marx is saying, hey, here is this idea of the proletariat. If you keep treating them the way you do, bourgeoisie, they're going to violently overthrow you. Violently overthrow. And that language was very troublesome, especially in a time just emerging from the French Revolution. That word violent overthrow was still causing a little bit of panic in the minds of everyone. So when we're talking about Karl Marx and his infamous Red Book, especially in a capitalist nation, we kind of go, hold on, violent overthrow, oh my gosh. And in this time period, same thing. We were still coming off and reeling from the French Revolution. But back to the idea at hand. They start off as industrial socialists. So this idea that there's the exploitation of the working class by the bourgeoisie, future violent revolutions, overthrow those capitalists, and Marx was definitely anti-capitalist. He painted an unfriendly picture of capitalism in his Communist Manifesto. So hold that thought on romantic movement. I think that's actually in the that'll be kind of in a little bit of a next section here. So the difference between French socialism and Marxist socialism, literally spelled out for you. This is from the crash course. If you don't have a spot for this in your notes, make sure to write this out in the margin. French socialism is going to think government in the middle class should step in to help the working class, Marx is never going to conceive of government actually stepping in. And that's where, again, we kind of diverge from Marx's ideas versus communism even, because as we're going to see a little bit later, if we haven't already talked about in class, communism is going to be government ownership of the major factors of production. So he would have turned over in his grave, seeing all this communism stuff, and was actually kind of against government intervention. And the whole idea of communism is government intervention. So it's kind of one of those interesting phenomenon that's happened that a lot of communists, oh, Marx is our guy. He's our father of socialism. We love him. He's given godlike status in the USSR. USSR, again, stands for United Soviet Socialist Republic. But they're really, truly a communist society because in communism, you have government controlling the factors of production. Marx would have never suggested that the government should do this. It should be, again, a community-based thing. And just a quick refresher, middle-class bourgeoisie, working-class proletariat. Here are your guys, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Let's take my screen down here a little bit again. You can't see their names unless I take it all the way down here. So there are their names down there at the bottom if you can see those. And then we're getting into the Goya painting. It is worth your time, if we haven't already done this in class, or if you missed out on it, or you need a refresher, to watch the 5-minute video, Spencer's Painting of the Week on Goya, talking about the Napoleon invasion of Spain, and what the ramifications of this painting are, with it being more of a realistic painting, showing the gruesome realities of war. You can see the anguish in the people's faces, and of course the Napoleon soldiers are standing there almost like robots, and we'll talk a little bit more about that one in class. But it kind of all goes back to what is that importance, the first time that the world has seen that bloodiness of real war. Previously you have pictures that are just heroes coming back from war, nothing really truly gruesome. You've only got leaders being heroes. Even my gal Catherine up there in the corner, and again, this dude here coming back, I've never, there's a cherub, little seraphim dude, floating through the sky trying to put a laurel wreath on the top of this guy's head. I mean, even the one down in the corner, you've just got the inhabitants that have been taken over by Napoleon and his forces kind of bending down saying, "Oh, yes, sir, you're all awesome." They don't show the bloodiness, the war, and all of the onslaught, and just truly gruesome happenings that go into taking over a country or being at war and making them your subjects. So the importance of Goya's 3rd of May. They really like to talk about that, and at least that idea on the AP exam. We've actually had this picture before, and you guys did hopefully L1, L2, L3 on it, either in class or for extra credit. So again, you kind of got that idea again of being a hero. Getting into some romanticism, there's some people up there that should start to make some sense to you, and usually by this time you've talked about romanticism in your English classes. You've read Wordsworth either with Miss Ward or some of the other English teachers. So you've got Lord Byron up there at the top, Shelley, Mary Shelley. Sometimes you guys have to read Frankenstein. So some real romantic in nature literature up there that you want to be aware of. Victor Hugo and his Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hunchback of Notre Dame, again going back to the old Middle Ages and the times of heroes. And then Les Mis, Les Miserables, actually going to be going into what's going to happen with some French Revolution stuff we'll be talking about in class later with the barricades. And it's not, of course, to be confused with that first French Revolution that we talked about starting in 1789. So again, these ideas are going to reinforce nationalism, They're influenced by Rousseau, who's a little bit of a weirdo because he starts off as our Enlightenment thinker with his social contract, and then now all of a sudden he's in Romanticism. And if you know anything about the two of these, they're distinct opposites. Romanticism is a reaction to the empiricism of the Enlightenment and finding things out by science, where the Romantics are more like go out and feel it and experience it and live it so that you know it, kind of thing. So Rousseau's, again, kind of a little bit of a weird bird because he gets to be on both sides of the Enlightenment and Romantic chart. He gets to be on both. And if you haven't had a chance to kind of take a listen to Beethoven, Wagner, Chopin, hopefully we'll get a chance to do that in class. If not, fire them up on YouTube next time you're studying or whatever. Getting into the reforms and the revolutions, we've already hopefully talked about how Germany united against Napoleon because they gave him something to actually be united about. They got rid of the old Holy Roman Empire, and now they've got Napoleon, and so now the Germans are like, hey, we want to rule Germany, and we just want to be Germans, and we want to do this on our own, so back off. And it's all, some of these ideas are all going to kind of start down in Greece because the Ottoman Empire is currently in control of Greece. It's worth your while to go back to the chart, the map that has the Confederation of Germany, and kind of see what's going on with some of the other places outside of Germany. Right now we've only focused on the German Confederation, but if you start to look at the other places, you can see where the Ottoman Empire is actually in control. This is a picture over here of little Colette, one of our main characters in Les Miserables. Again, I don't normally often say this, but I would suggest the SparkNotes version, or ask a Les Mis expert, because there's a huge cult following. Fan following of Les Mis. It's one of the longest Broadway running plays, but and again, it just came out a couple of years back. At this point, anyway, when I'm making these videos, with Hugh Jackman and what's her name and what's his name and all those people. I just remember Hugh Jackman, of course, and there are not any more than 6 spoken words in the whole stinking thing, and those 6 words are not all together. So, watch it if you like. It's almost 3 hours long, or hey, like I said, SparkNote it or ask somebody about it. There is one guy that I like to talk about, and that's because we watch, a couple of his movies sometimes in class. Alexander, I don't know if it's Dumas, I just usually say Dumas. I think that's pretty close. He is an author during this Romantic time period, whose, again, father is an aristocrat of France. Is it France? Yes, aristocrat of France. His mother is an enslaved African, and so he's, kind of this different person to France. He kind of sees things through a little bit of a different lens. And he kind of works for Louis Philippe, which you're going to find out is in our list of people in charge of France here in just a little bit when we go over the order of the new monarchs after the French Revolution. But when Louis Philippe is ousted, he kind of falls out of favor when Napoleon, that's Napoleon III, by the way, not, the one from the Revolution or whatever, not the Elba Waterloo guy, when Napoleon III comes to power. And so he spends a lot of time kind of writing about the glory of the old days, and what's going on and things like that. So we get into the Count of Monte Cristo. You may have seen anything on the Three Musketeers. He writes, and of course in the Three Musketeers series, he writes The Man in the Iron Mask, which I love to show in class, and sometimes give to the human geography teachers for you guys to watch at the end of the year when you're just sitting around twiddling your thumbs. Count of Monte Cristo's one we'll be watching in class, hopefully for extra credit. And if you haven't seen the Three Musketeers, you need to. One of the best versions is the one with Kiefer Sutherland, and I think it's Charlie Sheen. Go back and watch those. They've got some more updated versions that they've made in the past few years, but again, there's a chick running around and they're firing guns and all this technological weapons, and it's just to kind of keep the interest there. If you want to get something that's still somewhat modern, but not old black and white 60s or 80s, go back to the one from the 90s that has Kiefer Sutherland in it, and a blonde actor named Rebecca De Mornay. Watch that one. It's pretty good. So, there's your content check number 2. Sorry I talk so fast, but again, just trying to get through all of this stuff for you. I wanted to try and keep these videos quick, but there's just too much content to cover. So, good luck with content check number 2. See you next time.